The motivation for making this video is that for the past 6 years, I have also dealt with the negativity that is caused by an evil entity, a negative thought form, a demon, whatever name you want to call it. The tools I have used effectively have been reminding myself to have gratitude, praying instead of dwelling on feelings of anger or despair, such as Our Father, Hail Mary, and Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Soha. Navigating my daily life with the aid of my intuitive faculties, and using tarot to find out the secrets behind what this entity is, what it is trying to do, and how to ultimately effectively dismantle it. My issue is this demon is connected to a living person in my life, and until they stop interfering in my life, I have to be strong and ride out the storm. Most of us know these days how difficult it can be to remove yourself from a narcissistic abuser, which is what this person is. Only they also are the harbinger of some sort of demon or negative spiritual entity. Again, call it what you like, but it's definitely a being operating independently and of its own agenda and accord. A being that this person who is this abusive person, it's a being that they have let into their life, and by extension, this being has tried to encroach itself upon my life. My advice would be that if you've been going through something like this for a long time, don't lose heart. It will pass. Keep searching, and you will find the right tools you need to be better. You got this. I don't remember the exact timestamps for all of the activity that went on, so I will remember them in the best order that I can. It was winter, early spring of 2013 when it all went down. I was 17 at the time, and as a lot of teenagers do, I struggled with my personal faith. I had renounced my faith in God, and I believe this was the trigger that set off the activity. It started with illness. I remember the period of about 2 to 3 months where I was horribly sick. My entire body was stiff. I was weak to the point where I couldn't move a lot or even stay awake in school. I had lost an excessive amount of weight, about 15 pounds, within the span of a couple of weeks, and I developed a strange fever that created this rash that would migrate across my face. It wouldn't spread, it would move from one spot to another. The school nurse thought I had scarlet fever and suggested I go see a doctor. My family didn't have medical insurance at the time, which meant going to the doctor would be expensive, and if I did go, it better be worth it. So I was taken to the doctor and had many tests ran, and blood taken from me to find out what was wrong. All results came up negative. They found nothing wrong with me. I remember my mom being angry with me because in her eyes I had faked it, and we now lost a lot of money. That was my first indication that something wasn't right. Then came the voice. I remember sitting on my bed in my room, texting my boyfriend of the time, when I heard the faintest voice say, "Katie" or "Kate." I have a habit for overthinking, so I thought to myself, it's just noise from the TV, so I turned my TV off and went back to texting. I heard it again. "Katie." The voice didn't sound present like a voice would if it were you and I talking. It was almost as if it was disembodied or ethereal. I felt my fight or flight kick in and went internally frantic. My at-the-time boyfriend, we'll call him Jacob, had told me, "I don't know how you feel about religion, but maybe you could pray." And so I tried. I heard a knock from one of my bedroom walls, and immediately started texting my older brother, who was down in the living room. He was the only Christian in the household. I was still questioning, and my mother is an atheist and does not believe in any of this sort of thing. I was telling him about what I feel was going on, hoping he would be able to give me some ways to deal with this. I was met with a message along the lines of, "Stop believing in ghosts, and if you want to know what evil is, open the Bible." It was very blunt, and I could tell he was irritated with me, so I thanked him anyways and just wanted to diffuse any irritability that he may have had. For my own comfort, I went downstairs and watched TV with him until he went to sleep and I had to go back to my room. I tried to sway my thoughts of any paranormal activity happening and went on to ease myself to sleep. It had only just begun. I remember going to sleep that night and I had a dream where I was laying in my bed and my blankets were slowly being pulled off of me and ended up at the foot of my bed. I woke up the next morning and my blankets were exactly there, piled off at the foot of my bed. This could be counted as a coincidence as we don't have very much control over what we do in our sleep, kicking and pushing blankets off the bed included, but something in my heart told me it was more than coincidence. I had been waking up between 2:45 a.m. to 3 a.m. pretty regularly. This time is known as the witching hour or the haunting hour, or whatever you want to call it, and I was waking up in the brunt of it. Whenever I would wake up, the atmosphere in my bedroom had changed. I felt someone or something there with me, but I always slept facing the wall so that I would never have to see what it was. In a childlike attempt to protect myself, I would wrap myself up like a mummy with my blankets, making sure from head to toe that my blankets were completely wrapped around me and could not be taken off of me. I would sleep like this all night, to the point where I was essentially bathing in my own sweat because of the warm blankets, and the left side of my outer thighs and hips were sore and bruised because I was too afraid to move from that position. When I told Jacob about all of this, he told me his stepdad was really big into religion and could possibly help me. I kept an open mind and we went to meet with his stepdad. We prayed and he let me borrow his Bible, telling me it was special and to keep it with me. He also told me to claim back my space, to tell this entity that it was not welcome and that it must leave. So I took the information I was given and Jacob took me home. At this point, after all the miscellaneous stuff that was happening, I was terrified to go into my own house. I would cry and beg to Jacob to let me stay with him and to not make me go home. But being we were both 17, we didn't have the freedom to go on and stay at each other's houses every night, so I always had no choice but to return to the darkness that I felt in my house. I took a deep breath and went inside. I walked to my bedroom entrance, opened the door, and with much fear and hesitation, I told this entity that this was my house and it was not welcome. I held up the Bible that Jacob's stepdad had given me and told the entity to leave. This is hard to describe, but the energy in the room had almost this mocking nature about it. It felt as if this thing was telling me it knew I was weak and didn't stand a chance against it, but nonetheless I still had to live with it. This is where shit really started to go down. I remember there was one evening where my mom and I had returned from running errands. She went into the house first, and I remember her panicking because one of her candle wax warmers had shot up into flames. She had a Yankee Candle wax warmer, where you put a little white tea-light candle into a space underneath the actual piece that holds the wax, and it melted the wax above. She had gotten this as a gift and had it for months without issue. This 4 to 5 inch wax warmer had went into flames about 2 to 3 feet tall, almost touching the beams of our house and ceiling. The same incident happened again shortly after. My mother was playing her games on the computer and listening to her CDs as she normally did, and the wax melter had once again shot into flames. This terrifies me because the melter was behind my mother, and if she had not turned around to get whatever it was she needed, she wouldn't have noticed the fire, and I'm pretty sure this thing would have killed her. To this day, she still doesn't believe in spirits or things of that nature, and while I respect her beliefs, it makes me fear for her, wondering if something will take advantage of her ignorance on the subject and hurt her. By this point, I was going to church with a school friend and I had become a born-again Christian. I made it a habit to listen to gospel music, read my Bible out loud, and pray over St. Michael candles for protection. I remember one night I was feeling particularly afraid and prayed to St. Michael, keeping my candle lit for a while until I felt safe again, and then I went to sleep. As I stated earlier, I had been sleeping wrapped up in my blankets from head to toe, barely able to move. When I had woken up the next morning, I rolled over to check my alarm clock and felt something against my back in bed. It was my St. Michael candle that I had originally had on my nightstand approximately 1.5 feet away from my bed. I took this as a message from the entity that it was mocking me again as I tried to fight for protection. I was terrified. I would get scratch marks on my body that would just manifest a couple times in marks of 3s. Whatever body part was affected would just start burning, and when I would check, there would be scratch marks. I feel that I should add that at the time I had a horrible nail-biting habit that left me unable to scratch basic itchy feelings I would get, let alone be able to leave these marks on my body. I remember waking up one morning, and I was getting ready to go out with Jacob. I was getting ready to take a shower when I noticed something weird in the reflection of my bathroom mirror. I examined my body in the mirror, and on my shoulder blade in a diagonal form, there was this 5 to 6 inch scratch mark that was this deep red and purple color. It felt like a scar that had welted over. It looked so fresh, but there was no blood, no open wound. I wrapped myself up in a towel and called Jacob, telling him I needed him to be there ASAP. When he arrived, he attempted to calm me down, but enough was enough. He contacted a friend of his, we'll call him Ty. Ty had a godmother who was a shaman healer, and he got into contact with her, telling her my story. She asked me for my full name, address, and a few other bits of information. Then Ty said he would keep in contact with me. A few days had gone by, and at the time I was sitting on my living room couch when I felt the lift of the negative energy that had been once occupying the house. I received a text from Ty. "It is done." Ty's godmother had gone deep into the astral realm and met this entity that had been tormenting me, and she had exorcised it from my house. When I asked her what it was that was haunting me, she said that it was something so dark and so evil. She refused to tell me the name of it, which leads me to believe it was something demonic. The activity had gone on for only 2 or 3 months, but it felt like an eternity. I had finally gotten this weight off of my shoulders. Whatever this entity was, it wanted me secluded. It wanted me to believe I was alone. My family still doesn't believe me about this stuff that happened to me, even though some of it happened right before their own eyes. But that's what the entity wanted. My old bedroom where most of the activity happened still has a negative energy in there that you can feel slightly. Part of me believes it's the entity remaining dormant until it gets another chance to break through. But that is my story or novel. I hope you enjoyed it. Just wanted to add in that a lot of people ask me what religious, spiritual path I followed since this occurrence, and I am an eclectic witch, and even though this experience was horrifying for me, it also took a lot of weight off of my shoulders, having since educated myself about these entities and understood them better. Knowledge is by far the ultimate form of power. The guy who used to be executive director for the local homeless shelter had such an off-putting vibe that damn near everyone who stayed there could describe it. Most folks said that it was like he had a TV static aura around him. Plus, there was also that one time several of us saw a literal hellhound materialize and chase after his car one night. followed a few weeks later by an incident where, in the middle of telling a new woman the latest ghost story, the temperature in our room dropped, and a baby in the next room woke up shrieking bloody murder once we got to the part about the hellhound. Freaky stuff. We used to joke that he'd made a deal with the devil to get away with all the underhanded and downright criminal stuff he did, but after that, I'm not entirely sure it was a joke anymore. About 20 years ago, I was an amateur ghost hunter. I had a few experiences that I think were with demons. One was at a church that I had attended during high school that had stories attached to it about a demon that had shown itself on a Sunday morning in front of the entire congregation. I asked a few of the older members of the church about the story and was told that the pastor at the time was an adulterer and that one morning a green light appeared on the balcony, revealed his secret, and told him to leave the church. One night, a friend of mine who was dating my sister at the time had janitorial duties at the church, and I convinced him to let me and my girlfriend, now wife, into the church with some equipment. Me and my girlfriend went into the church, and immediately there was a rotten smell. I turned around and asked if everyone else smelled it, and all of a sudden, it sounded like someone was running towards us on top of the pews. They were crackling loudly, one by one, from the front of the church towards the back where we were standing. The other people I was with ran out. I stayed and took some pictures. My friend got a phone call and told me we had to leave immediately. While we were in the church, my sister was across town, house-sitting for a friend. Their dog started growling and showing its teeth, and she started hearing voices in the house. We were closing up the church, and the doors started swinging open and closed on their own, fighting with us. My friend and I had to push with all of our weight behind it to keep the doors still so that we could lock the doors. We left and went to where my sister was at, and she was standing outside waiting for us and wouldn't go back into the house. I went to collect her belongings and set an audio recorder on the table. When we listened back, there was a distinct voice that sounded like a little girl that said, "Go away."